Well, when you can't govern, just rely on publicity stunts. That is the mantra, presumably, of the presently very unserious Republican Party. And today, the nominal House Speaker, Kevin McCarthy, got in a photo op of his own with a highly produced video of his jaunt to the southern border in Arizona with a delegation of Republican freshmen. Not to be outdone, Kevin's supervisor in Congress, Marjorie Taylor Greene, has teamed up with none other than George Santos as co-sponsor of a bill that could be used to ban books by LGBTQ authors in schools nationwide. They're all taking a page out of the Ron DeSantis playbook as he continues his own demagoguing photo ops to entertain MAGA voters, signing a bill allowing him to ship migrants across the country using Florida taxpayer money. But DeSantis is much more private about a behind-the-scenes effort that is frighteningly serious. Last month, the Tampa Bay Times reported that he is appearing in radio ads in Idaho, of all places, calling to invoke Article 5 of the U.S. Constitution to call for a convention to amend the Constitution. DeSantis' stated goal is to get in an amendment imposing congressional term limits. But as Puck News notes, even this position has allowed fringe conservatives to dream of a day when they can use their control of state legislatures to fix all sorts of perceived federalist ills. Joining me now is David Jolly, former Republican congressman and MSNBC political analyst. And David, this is one of my things that I've obsessed about over the years because there has been a long-standing conservative Republican wish to get in and tinker with the Constitution to do things like to impose a balanced budget amendment, which would trigger dramatic, draconian cuts across the board to everything from Social Security, Medicare to, food stamps. And it would be automatic like it is in some states. And to do other things. Now that we know they like to ban books, we know that they like to ban critical race theory. They could do all of that in the Constitution if they got their way. The fact that DeSantis is quietly doing this and not publicizing it, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, Article 5 is one of those kind of flunky civic lessons we skip over, but it is the ultimate measure in federalism. And in today's society, it's the ultimate buzzwords towards the radicals and insurrectionists who believe that the federal government should be toppled, that their power is illegitimate or that somehow they have used it for illegitimate purposes. And so what Ron DeSantis has embraced is this notion that allow a collection of states to frankly take over the authority and the constitutional prerogatives of the U.S. Constitution, but also the Congress. It is clunky. It is not something he will necessarily run on, but Joy, I promise you, it is a buzzword to the fringe right-wing groups within today's Republican Party.
Well, it's a reminder that he's a member of the Tea Party movement, right? He came in with the Tea Party, and he was a backbench Tea Partier, but he tracks with the things that they believe. He's right now polling just behind Donald Trump in the latest Quinnipiac poll. So there's a hunger for him. He's a certain kind of mean that they like. They like the fact that he's going after Black history, and attacking Black people is sort of the easiest way to sort of get on first base, with the MAGA faithful, which we knew Donald Trump did as well. What do you make of the fact that he seems to be putting the whole weight of his appeal on attacking Black people and brown immigrants and gay people and trans people?
Ron DeSantis is tapping into the bloodstream of a party that wants to take America back 50 years. And he is refusing to show leadership and suggest, let's look towards the next 50. There's no other way to approach this. I mean, often overlooked is that one of the first things he did was eliminate majority minority districts. He set up his own election police force. And of the 20 people he arrested, 15 or 17, I believe, were African-American. He is somebody that now has attacked African-American education. He is attacking any type of liberal arts education, as he just did at New College down in the Sarasota area. It is a dangerous move. Donald Trump is uniquely dangerous because he would shred the Constitution. Ron DeSantis is uniquely dangerous on cultural issues and his strive to take the nation back 50 years.
And if you don't think that a constitutional amendment banning abortion would be part of it, I mean, it's all of the fever dreams that they can't enact through the electorate because people don't want any of these things. So they're thinking, we'll just impose it in the Constitution. I do want to talk about the unserious nature because there's a part of it in which, Kevin McCarthy and Marjorie Greene are ridiculous, right? They're sort of funny. And George Santos, it's easy to laugh at him. But some of it's funny, ha-ha, and some of it's funny, frightening. Because what they're doing with all of these memes and shtick is they're kind of softening up the electorate for some really bizarre things that they want to do, banning LGBTQ books nationwide. That's big, big government.
Yeah, it would be funny if it wasn't so dangerous because they are in power and they might have even more power in 2024. Look, on immigration, this is a party whose most recent achievement was to separate innocent children from their parents, many of those kids never to be reunited again. And that is actually a policy they would likely pursue. On this banning books issue, and I've got to say, it's not just Marjorie Taylor Greene and George Santos, it is Ron DeSantis and other governments. Let's break down the absurdity. And I honestly think you got to attack the absurdity of it. First and foremost, this is a group of people that believe reading a book can make you gay. Think about it. That's their biggest concern. If you read a book, you might decide you're gay. Secondly, qualitatively, their assessment is that if you're LGBTQ, that somehow that's wrong, that you're not allowed to be, that somehow that's an offense to society. And then here's the other buzzword you hear. This is what they wrap it in, and I think this has to be attacked head on, Joy. They say that parents and kids are under attack. You heard it from Sarah Sanders in the response to Joe Biden. You hear it from DeSantis. You hear it from Marjorie Taylor Greene. Parents and children are under attack. No, they are not. Kids are being exposed to diversity for the first time in modern America, and that's a good thing. And for people who say, Ron DeSantis, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and others, that somehow society has this outsized influence on their kids, maybe they need to focus on their parenting and not on society. Think about that. They believe that their parenting skills are being overshadowed by society. Focus on what starts at home. Let society provide the diversity that enriches culture and enriches your children.
And the thing that's ironic about all of this, David, is that they think the solution to what they see as societal ills is big government. It's the governor of Florida telling you specifically what books you can read. It's the government deciding specifically what teachers can teach. It's literal government thought control. And that's what they accuse the left of, but they're the ones saying, no. Don't worry about it, parents. We got this. We'll put the books into the hands of your children. Wipe them off of the librarian's shelves. We're the librarian now. That's pretty ironic. David Jolly, always a pleasure. Thank you very much. Cheers. Up next.